Hello, it's Reija and welcome to the new year. Today I am going to do my December reading wrap-up, and despite my ambitious reading plans for December, I actually managed to read only 3 things, so I am going to combine my comics and book reading for this month. Without further ado, let's get started. First, I want to talk about Bingo Love by T. Franklin, Jenn St-Onge and Joy Sun. This I read for the Queer Lit Readathon and I loved it. This has gorgeous art. It is a story about aging queer ladies finding each other again after they've been separated when they were young because of society's problems. Dealing with homosexuality and queerness, and because of society's prejudice against their relationship. And they find each other again as elderly ladies, and it is just such a pure and sweet love story. And I gave it 4 stars, mainly because at points the art was a little bit grainy. It felt like the art was done on a smaller scale and then resized for publication, and that made it look less sharp and crisp as other panels. And also the story is very simplistic, but it gave me all the feels and I really liked it, and it just makes me happy. It just makes me happy to know that this exists, and I'm happy to own it. Next graphic novel that I read was Extremity, Volume 1, and I have to say that this did not give me all the happy feelings. This is a very Mad Max-inspired world. It is a kind of future dystopian in a fantasy setting where people are living on these floating islands up in the sky, and down in the ground there is this old civilization of old times where there's this old technology that people are scavenging, and it is very much like medieval style, style of armor and weaponry fused with like a Mad Max future setting. So in that sense, stylistically, it is not very original, because I've seen a lot of this type of interpretation of what a sort of dystopian society could be like. Mad Max, Warhammer 40k. It's just, I've seen it done, okay? So what is the story about? Maybe the story has something to offer. Well, it is a revenge quest. Yeah. So the story is not very original either. It is about revenge, the corrosive effect of it, how revenge and living for revenge makes you kind of diminish as a person. And all of these themes I have seen done in other media, and I have seen them done better. This story is very kind of simplistic, and I just felt that the characters were kind of paper thin. I didn't get a full grasp on them based on this one volume, and unfortunately this volume didn't entice me to continue on with the series, so I'm not going to. I gave this volume 2 stars. And the final thing that I read in December was Wild Beauty by Anna-Marie McLemore. And I loved it. Pretty much all my possible gripes with this book are nitpicks. Like, there's some repetitiveness in the writing, some passages that made me go like, okay, this is kind of a deja vu because this has been repeated over and over in the narrative. But those are just gripes. This book felt magical. The story was so fantastic, and I was constantly on my toes with it, and I was constantly wondering where it was going. So it wasn't predictable. I could not have predicted the ending, which is great. I love it, and it has on the page representation of bisexuality. There is both a female-female and a male-female relationship on the page. The attraction to women and to men is seen as equal. There is no judgment of these girls and how they are feeling and how they are attracted to different people. It's just so wonderful, and I felt seen. I felt like I finally saw an aspect of myself represented on page, and it was a wonderful feeling, and I gave this book 4.5 stars, and it was such a wonderful reading experience, and I'm already craving to reread this. This book is such a comfort. It made me feel like I was tucked in bed under a blanket fortress, and I just felt so warm and fuzzy. And even though this deals with such heavy topics like colonialism, immigration, and this sort of... It deals with how people use other people, how people use disenfranchised people for their own gains because they know that these people can't fight against them. It deals with such heavy topics, but it doesn't lose the hopefulness, and it's just a wonderful reading experience. I loved it. And I also loved that this is a kind of timeless, ageless story. You are never quite sure at which time this book takes place. It could be set in any time. Like I was picturing something like 1950s or like 1970s or something. But it is a very ageless book. And I love that. I loved the ambiguity of the times that was represented here. I just love it. And I love that all the characters were fully fleshed out people, even the ones in very minor roles. I felt like I could grasp who they were as people. And that was great. Highly recommend this. And there you have it. Those were all the things I got to reading in December. I also started other things, but I didn't manage to finish them, so they will appear in my January wrap-up, most likely. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more. Bye bye!